All right, all you sales and revenue leaders out there, get ready, because today we're going deep on opportunity stage forecasting.
Yeah.
It's like the secret sauce for predictable revenue growth, especially in the SaaS world.
Absolutely.
And to help us break it all down, I've got Noah here, a total pro when it comes to sales and revenue operations.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So Noah, for those who might be new to this whole thing, what exactly is opportunity stage forecasting?
Well, think of it this way. It's a way to predict, like really predict, how likely you are to close a deal
Okay.
based on exactly where it is in your sales pipeline.
Right.
So picture your pipeline as a journey, right?
Okay.
With clear stages, things like lead generation, qualification, you send the proposal, then negotiation, and finally closing.
Gotcha.
And instead of just going with your gut, we're using data, hard data, at each of these stages
I like it.
to make smart decisions and create these really accurate sales forecasts.
So no more guessing games, huh?
It's all about taking the guesswork out of hitting those big revenue goals.
That's what we like to hear.
Yeah.
But, okay, how do we actually do this? How do we go from, like, gut feelings to data-driven forecasting?
You're asking the right question.
What are the core pieces we need to have in place?
Okay, first things first. Everyone on your sales team has got to be on the same page, using the same playbook.
Yeah, got to be a team.
Exactly. We need that solid foundation, so clearly defining those sales stages is super important.
Makes sense. So everyone's speaking the same language.
Exactly, and everyone's tracking progress in the same way.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Then we track each deal meticulously as it moves through those stages.
Gotcha.
And that feeds real-time data straight into our forecasts.
Nice. So we're getting those updates constantly.
But here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, I love interesting.
We layer in historical sales data.
So we're looking back to see what worked before.
You got it. It's like having a crystal ball.
Okay, but what exactly are we looking for in that historical data? What's important?
Great question. We're searching for those patterns and trends that help us predict what's going to happen in the future.
Okay, give me an example. Like, how would that actually work?
Sure. Let's say your data shows that deals after a certain product demo tend to close faster.
Interesting.
That's a huge insight that can totally shape your sales strategy moving forward.
Makes sense. We can double down on what's working.
Right. We're also looking at things like your average sales cycle length, like how long it takes to close a deal,
Okay,
and your win rate at each stage of the pipeline.
got it.
This gives us these benchmarks for future deals, helps us make smarter predictions.
I'm starting to see how this all comes together.
It's all connected.
So we got those clear stages, we're tracking everything like hawks, and we're using that historical data to get those insights.
That's the rest of it.
What's the payoff? Why should our sales and revenue leaders out there care about all of this?
The benefits, they're huge. Trust me.
I'm listening. Sell me on it.
First off, you get way more accurate sales predictions.
Okay, and that means
Less stress, more efficient planning.
I can see how that would be appealing.
Imagine being able to say to your CEO, hey, based on what our data is telling us, we're projected to hit 95% of our revenue target this quarter.
Now, that's the kind of confidence every sales leader wants.
And it goes beyond that. Think more strategic decision-making.
Okay, I like where this is going.
With accurate forecasts, you can prioritize the deals that are most likely to close.
Smart.
Allocate resources where they'll make the biggest impact.
Yeah, got to be efficient.
And you can spot any bottlenecks in your sales process before they become major problems.
So no more scrambling at the last minute.
Exactly. No more chasing deals that are going nowhere.
All right, I'm sold. This has sounded really good.
It's a game changer.
But let's get practical. What tools can we use to actually put all of this into practice? I know CRM systems are a staple, but I'm guessing there's more to the story.
You're right. Your CRM, that's your home base. Think Salesforce, HubSpot.
The usual suspects?
Exactly. They're essential. You got to have them for managing and tracking those opportunities.
Right.
But there are these specialized sales forecasting tools that can supercharge your CRM.
Okay, now we're talking. Give us the rundown on those tools.
Platforms like MeetRecord and Gong.io, they take things to a whole new level.
How so?
They go beyond just tracking deals. They analyze the conversations happening on sales calls.
Wait, so they're actually listening to what's being said?
Exactly. Imagine being able to measure a deal's health based on the actual conversations between your reps and your prospects.
Wow, that's incredible.
That's pretty amazing.
But how do they actually work? Do they, like, record every call?
You got to integrate with your existing communication platforms, capture everything, and then they analyze it, looking for key insights.
Okay, so what kind of insights are we talking about?
Things like sentiment. What's the overall tone of the conversation? What are the objections that keep coming up? Even how engaged the prospect is during the call.
So we're not just relying on what reps tell us is happening in a deal, we're getting the actual data.
That's the power of it.
That's a game changer for sales leaders.
Absolutely. And it gives you this deal health score.
Okay, I like that.
It predicts how likely a deal is to close based on all that conversation data.
So we're taking out some of the guesswork.
Exactly. And it's all automated and unbiased, so you're getting real-time insights straight to your sales team.
That's amazing. So we're getting a much clearer picture of what's really happening with our deals.
And that data-driven approach can lead to some serious results.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me an example.
Take Kisi, for example. They're a cloud security company.
Okay, I've heard of them.
They were struggling with their sales forecasting, couldn't quite get it right.
Happens to the best of us.
But they implemented opportunity stage forecasting, and they started using Meet Record to analyze their conversation data.
Okay, what happened?
Their annual recurring revenue, it shot up like a rocket, 300% in just 2 years.
300%. That's not a boost, that's a total transformation.
Exactly, and that's the power we're talking about here, the power of data-driven forecasting.
All right, so we've got a good handle on what opportunity stage forecasting is, why it matters, and the tools we can use to make it happen.
We've covered a lot of ground.
But I'm sure there are some bumps in the road, right? I mean, implementing any new process, there are always challenges.
You're absolutely right. Every journey has its obstacles.
So what are some of the challenges that companies might run into along the way?
Welcome back. You ready to really get into the nuts and bolts of putting opportunity stage forecasting to work?
Absolutely. Let's do it. In part 1, we talked about the what and the why.
Right, big picture.
Now it's time for the how, the nitty-gritty of making it all happen. What are the actual steps our listeners can take to implement this in their own companies?
All right, so first things first, we got to do a deep dive into your current sales process.
Okay.
Like a pipeline inspection.
I like it.
We need to see exactly how deals flow through your system.
So where do we even begin with this inspection? What are the key things we should be looking at?
All right, first up, we got to identify your existing sales stages. What are the typical steps a deal goes through, from that first contact all the way to the big close?
Gotcha.
The question is, do you have super clear definitions for each stage?
Yeah, that makes sense. Everyone needs to be on the same page.
And critically, is your whole sales team using the same terminology?
That's so important. I've seen that go wrong so many times.
Consistency is key here. You can't have different reps using different definitions.
Right, or interpreting those stages in their own way.
Exactly. That'll mess up your whole forecasting model.
Totally. So we need everyone speaking the same language, using those same definitions.
We need a unified language and clear criteria that have to be met to move a deal from one stage to the next.
That makes sense.
This makes sure we're tracking everything accurately and forecasting consistently.
Gotcha. So we've got those stages all nice and clearly defined. What's next on the to-do list?
Now it's time to put on our data detective hats.
Oh, I love a good detective story.
We're going to analyze your historical sales data
Okay.
and uncover those hidden patterns and trends.
I'm ready to do some digging.
Think of it like searching for clues.
Okay, I'm following. So what kind of clues are we looking for in this data? What's going to help us with those forecasts?
Great question. We're trying to figure out what's been working
Okay.
and what hasn't been working so well.
Makes sense. So what kind of things specifically should we be looking at?
For example, what's your average sales cycle length? How long does it typically take to close a deal?
Okay, yeah, that's a good one.
And how does that vary across different product lines or different types of customers?
Right, because it could be totally different.
And what's your win rate at each stage of the pipeline?
Right, like how many deals are actually making it through each stage.
Exactly. And then we got to figure out what factors are contributing to deals closing quickly.
Or, on the flip side, what's making them drag on forever?
You got it. We're piecing together a puzzle.
I like that, using those data points to see the big picture of how our sales are actually doing.
It's all about connecting the dots.
Okay, so let's say we've gathered all these clues, we've got a good understanding of what's been happening in the past. How do we actually translate that into forecasts, into predictions about the future?
All right, that's where we start building our forecasting models.
Okay, now we're getting to the good stuff.
These models, they're going to help us predict what's going to happen in the future.
Based on what we've learned from the past.
Exactly. Now, there are a few different ways to approach this, but the key is to keep it relevant to your specific sales process.
Okay, that makes sense.
And make sure your team understands it and can actually use it.
So we're not building some super complex algorithm that only a data scientist can understand.
No way. You can start simple Maybe with a spreadsheet
I can handle a spreadsheet.
that incorporates those key variables we've been talking about, like your average deal size, your win rate at each stage, and any other factors that seem to be influencing your sales.
Okay, so we can start simple and then get more complex as we go.
Exactly. You can refine your models, add more variables over time as you get more data, and get a better understanding of what's really driving your sales.
So it's a process of continuous improvement.
You got it. Always learning and adapting.
I like it. Now, we talked about CRM systems and those specialized forecasting tools in part one. How do those actually fit into the implementation process?
They're your partners in crime.
My trusty sidekicks.
Your CRM system, that's your central hub where you track every opportunity.
Right, got to keep everything organized.
And your sales team, they got to be super diligent about updating the status of each deal.
So accurate data entry is crucial.
Absolutely. Garbage in, garbage out, remember.
That's the golden rule of data.
And this is where those specialized sales forecasting tools can really shine.
All right, tell me more.
Platforms like NeatRecord and Gong.io, they integrate with your CRM.
Seamlessly, hopefully.
Exactly. They add a layer of intelligence by analyzing those conversations.
Right, we talked about that deal health score they can generate.
It's like having an extra set of eyes and ears on your deals.
But with the objectivity and consistency of data.
Exactly. Let's say your model predicts a deal is going to close, but the conversation analysis shows there are a lot of objections, or the prospect just isn't engaged.
Red flag.
Exactly. That tells you something's up. Maybe you need to adjust your forecast.
Or maybe our strategy for that deal needs to change.
You got it. We're combining that quantitative data from your CRM
With those qualitative insights from the conversations.
to get a more holistic picture of what's really going on.
I'm loving this. So we're getting this multi-dimensional view of each deal.
And it's all happening in real time.
Even better.
You don't have to wait for those end-of-month reports to see what's going on.
So we can course correct as we go.
Exactly. We're using data to make better decisions every step of the way.
This is sounding like we're giving our sales team superpowers.
It's about giving them the tools and the insights they need to succeed.
I like it. But even with the best tools, the perfect process, I'm sure there are still some challenges companies might face during implementation, right?
Of course, no process is perfect.
So what are some of those common roadblocks we should be prepared to deal with?
One of the biggest, we've already talked about it, is data quality.
Right, garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. If your CRM data is full of errors, inconsistencies, or missing info,
Our forecasts are going to be way off.
no matter how fancy your models are.
So data hygiene, that's mission critical.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
What are some tips for making sure our data is clean and consistent, ready to fuel those accurate forecasts?
It starts with setting clear expectations for your sales team.
Okay, so clear communication.
You got to give them detailed guidelines on how to enter data.
Standards. We need standards.
And emphasize how important it is to keep those records up to date.
Make sure they understand that it's not just busy work, it's actually making a difference.
Exactly. And don't forget about technology.
Yes.
It can be your best friend here.
Oh yeah, I'm all about using the right tools.
You can implement data validation rules right in your CRM.
So it catches those errors before they even get entered.
You got it. And there are data cleansing tools that can find and fix those inconsistencies in your existing data.
Okay, so we can clean up the messes we've already made.
Exactly. We got to start with a clean slate.
But data quality, that's just one piece of the puzzle, right?
Right. There are other hurdles we got to be prepared to jump over.
Like what? What else should we be thinking about?
Another common challenge is getting buy-in from your sales team,
Oh yeah, change can be tough.
especially for salespeople who are used to doing things a certain way.
They're creatures of habit,
And they might be resistant to these new methods.
especially if they've been successful in the past, using their own, maybe less data-driven approaches.
It's understandable, but we got to get them on board.
So how do we overcome that resistance and get everyone excited about this new way of doing things?
Communication.
Communication.
Yeah.
Communications.
Got to keep those lines open. You have to clearly explain the benefits of opportunity stage forecasting.
And focus on the what's in it for me, for those salespeople.
Exactly. Show them how it can make their jobs easier,
Help them close more deals.
boost their earnings.
Now you're talking their language.
And don't just tell them, show them. Provide comprehensive training.
Right. Hands-on experience is always the best teacher.
And most importantly, listen to their concerns.
Make them feel heard.
Address those concerns head on.
Be proactive. Show them that we're all in this together,
It's about creating a culture of transparency and collaboration.
where everyone feels ownership over the forecasting process.
Exactly. When your sales team feels like they're part of this solution.
They're going to be way more likely to embrace it.
And when they see the value firsthand.
They'll become your biggest champions.
You got it. They'll be out there spreading the gospel of opportunity stage forecasting.
Love it. Now, before we wrap up this part, I want to address something that might be on our listeners' minds.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about the power of data.
Data is king.
But is there a risk of becoming too reliant on data? Losing that human element in sales?
That's a great question. We got to strike a balance.
If we have too much of a good thing.
It's definitely something to be mindful of. Remember, data should be a tool.
It should help us, not replace us.
Exactly. It should inform and enhance our sales efforts.
But it's not about replacing those human connections.
Opportunity stage forecasting, it's powerful, but it's not magic.
Right. It can't do everything for us.
Your salespeople, they still need those soft skills.
Being able to communicate, build rapport.
Active listening, understanding what your customers really need.
Data can help them prioritize, spot those potential problems.
But closing the deal, that still takes those human skills.
It's the human touch that makes the difference.
At the end of the day, it's all about relationships.
It's those relationships that drive sales.
Couldn't agree more.
All right, that wraps up part 2 of our deep dive into opportunity stage forecasting. We've covered a lot of ground.
From assessing your sales process to building those forecasting models and navigating those implementation challenges.
But there's still more to come. In part 3, we're going to shift gears and talk about how to measure your success.
And how to keep refining that forecasting process.
So stay tuned for the final chapter of our deep dive. And we're back for the grand finale of our deep dives into opportunity stage forecasting. We've talked about what it is, why it's so important, and how to get started.
Right, the foundation.
Now it's time to talk about results, making sure all that hard work is actually paying off.
Absolutely. It's not enough to just go through the motions. You got to make sure it's actually moving the needle.
So we've built our forecasting engine. It's running. How do we know if it's running well? What metrics should we be tracking? What signals should we be looking for to tell us if we're on the right path?
There are a few key performance indicators, KPIs as we like to call them, that can give you some real insight into how your forecasting process is doing.
Okay, love a good KPI. Give me the rundown.
One of the most important is forecast accuracy, plain and simple. How close are your predictions to what actually happens?
Right, are we hitting our targets or are we way off?
Exactly. Are you consistently overshooting or undershooting?
Okay, seems like a pretty obvious one. If our forecasts are consistently wrong, we know something's got to change. But it's not just about hitting some arbitrary accuracy target, right?
Yeah, it's about understanding why there's a difference.
Right. Why are we off?
And using that knowledge to make things better.
So we're not just looking at a single number. We're digging into the data to really understand what's going on.
Exactly. We got to ask the tough questions like, are there certain stages in your pipeline where the forecasts are always off?
Okay, yeah, that could point to a problem in our process.
Or are there things happening outside your company, like market shifts, competitors making moves? Are those things messing with your sales?
Right, we got to factor in those external forces.
These are the insights that'll help you refine those forecasting models and make smarter decisions.
Okay, so forecast accuracy, that's a big one. What other KPI should we be keeping tabs on?
Another important one is sales cycle length. How long does it typically take to close a deal?
From first contact to sign contract.
You got it. And does that time frame change for different products or different types of customers?
Right. Some deals might move faster than others.
And are there any bottlenecks in your process that are slowing things down unnecessarily?
So we want those cycle lengths to be getting shorter, right? The faster we can close deals, the better.
Speed is important, but it's not just about speed.
Right. It's about understanding why some deals take longer than others and making sure we're not getting in our own way.
Exactly. It's about optimizing that sales engine, making sure it's running smoothly and efficiently.
Makes total sense. So forecast accuracy, sales cycle length. What else should we be watching?
Conversion rates, got to keep an eye on those.
Okay, break that down for me.
What percentage of your leads are actually turning into opportunities?
Right, those leads that are actually worth pursuing.
And then how many of those opportunities are becoming closed deals, actual revenue?
So it's about how effective we are at moving those prospects through our pipeline and turning them into paying customers.
You got it. It's a measure of your sales efficiency.
How good are we at actually closing deals?
Exactly. And by tracking those conversion rates at each stage of your pipeline,
Okay.
you can pinpoint those weak spots, those areas where deals tend to stall out.
Interesting.
And then you can focus on improving those areas.
So maybe we need to give our sales team better training, or maybe our messaging needs some work, or maybe we need to tweak our qualification criteria.
You're thinking like a true sales strategist.
It's like we're detectives, gathering evidence, analyzing clues, looking for patterns,
I love that analogy.
and then using those insights to optimize our entire sales process.
Exactly. And just like a detective, you got to constantly be reviewing those findings, adjusting your approach as you go along.
Because things change. The market changes. Customer needs change. Our sales process has to keep up.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So how do we make sure we're continuously improving our opportunity stage forecasting? It's not something we just set up and forget about, right?
Right. It's an ongoing process, always learning, iterating, fine-tuning.
So how do we make sure we're staying on top of it?
First things first, you need a regular rhythm for checking in on your forecasting performance.
Like a weekly meeting, a monthly review, something like that.
Exactly. Get together with your sales team, talk about those KPIs,
See how we're doing.
analyze those differences between your forecasts and what actually happened,
Where were we right? Where were we wrong?
and figure out what you can do better next time.
It's all about that feedback loop, constantly learning and getting better.
And don't forget about all those amazing tools we have at our fingertips.
Right, our CRM systems, those specialized forecasting platforms, they can be a huge help here.
They can give you tons of data and insights to help you make those improvements.
Lots of dashboards, reports, even predictive analytics.
Technology can be a game changer when it comes to continuous improvement.
So we've got the tools, we've got the data, but what are some best practices, some things we can do to make sure we're really getting the most out of opportunity stage forecasting?
All right, here are a few things that have always worked well for me. First, involve your sales team in the forecasting process.
Okay, so don't just hand down forecasts from on high, get the folks on the ground involved.
Exactly. Get their input, their feedback. They're the ones talking to customers, closing deals. They often have the best insights.
Makes sense, they're seeing things we might not see from our ivory tower.
And when they feel like they're part of the process.
They're going to be more invested in making it successful.
Exactly. Another best practice, keep it simple.
Easy to understand, easy to use.
Don't overcomplicate your models. Avoid jargon. Make sure everyone understands what's going on.
Transparency is key.
The goal is to make this a process that everyone can buy into, not something that feels like a burden.
Make it part of the sales culture, not a chore.
Exactly. And last but not least, remember, opportunity stage forecasting, it's a journey, not a destination.
Always learning, always improving.
Don't be afraid to experiment, to iterate, to keep getting better.
So true. The more we invest in this process, the more valuable it becomes over time.
You got it.
Well, Nova, this has been an incredible deep dive into opportunity stage forecasting. Thanks so much for sharing your wisdom with our listeners.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
And to all of you listening out there, if you want more resources, more guidance on opportunity stage forecasting, be sure to check out the show notes. We got some great links and tools to help you get started. And until next time, keep diving deep.